So this is the hunting duck block. It is hunting dog block. It is again part of my book, The Retro Gaming Revival Quilt Along. You can buy the physical book on Amazon, or you can get each block individually on my website, or the entire book on my website as a PDF download. So, but if you want the physical book, you have to get that on Amazon. All of the links are down below whenever I talk about how to get the different links, so you can find those. So we need white, black, bright blue, and medium brown. So what I did is I went through and I pulled all the colors from the hunting duck block. Now for hunting duck, we used bright blue, green, coral, white, and black. So the first thing you want to do is figure out which fabrics you have in common. And in this case, I have 3 colors in common. I have the bright blue, so I grab that. I have the black, and then I have the white. Now, all 3 of these colors are from the Northcott Toscana line. So then I also need a medium brown now for the actual dog. So I pulled those 3 colors. Now I needed a medium brown. So I found this really cool batik medium brown in my stash. So I'll pull this one as well. So we want to go through the fabric that we got previously for this hunting duck. And I want to pull the fabrics that we're going to use for the laughing dog. So that means all the white and black. Well, I can't use anything with coral. So I'm going to take the coral aside. I can't use anything with the green. So I'm going to take the green aside. Okay, so there's blue and white. So what I'll do is I'm going to look to see what my combinations are. Blue and white. Yep, nope, I need that blue and white. Okay. Blue and black. Yep, I have a blue and black combo, so I'm going to take that. Oh, that's a coral. Need the green. There's another green. There's a green. Definitely want these solids. So we've got that. We'll take this solid here. I like how this is the only thing for the white and the black I've got. I don't need the coral. Here's some blue. I don't need the green. Don't need the coral. Oh, there's a black. Fantastic. And then the blues. All right, so I've got everything I need except for the browns. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these browns. All right, so I'm going to take this brown and I'm going to cut the strips that I need. And then I'll go back and see if I need anything for the others. So for the brown, I need a 2.5 inch strip and 2 1.5 inch strips. There we are. And I realized I glanced over at my YouTube, which is about 10 seconds behind. I glanced over there and I saw the top of my head again because I keep shoving my head under the camera and forgetting that the camera is right there and you can see it. Okay, so I need a 2.5. And then there is a 1.5 and a 1.5. There we are. Fantastic. So, set that aside. There is our scrap. Whoops. I apparently did not cut through the whole thing. There we go. All right, and then I'm going to take my brown, set it aside. Okay, so let's take a look right at the very beginning. So if you're looking at the pattern, the first one that you get to is the white. Thank you very much, Ann Reeld, for that. I appreciate it. So here is our white, all right? So I'm going to go through step by step just to make sure we don't have to cut additional whites, and then we'll figure it out. So let's take a look at the white. Let's take a look at the 2.5 inch strips. So for the 2.5 inch strips, I need 3 of the 4.5s and 2 of the 1.5s, and that's it. So I probably have enough in my stash to cut those. So let me get the iron ready. And in fact, here's a single 1.5. I'm just waiting for my iron to get ready because you see the crease is in there, I want to make sure I iron that crease out before I actually do any cutting. It is super important that all of your fabric gets ironed nicely before you do any sewing. Perfect. All right, let's use my Stripology ruler. Now remember, this is a teaching live stream, so if you have any questions, concerns, anything at all about anything I'm doing, please feel free to stop and ask if you are here in the audience. If you're watching this later on YouTube, feel free to make a comment and then I can answer your questions in the comment lines. All right, so we've got 3 4.5. Now I like to cut 2 at a time, so I'm going to go ahead and cut 4. Okay, and then I need 2 1.5s. There we are. So that means I do not have to cut another 2.5-inch strip of white because I have these all ready. So I'm going to take this white and set it aside. All right, so I've got those. I'm going to set these over here with my brown. Now I'm going to skip forward in my pattern and find my combinations. Okay, so it looks like white. I need white and bright blue. I just need 1 set of 2.5. Well, it looks like I've got that. So let me go ahead and cut that. You know what? I'm going to set this aside and grab this one. This one's easier to work with because it's smaller. Well, it's shorter, I should say. It's longer, but it's shorter, so it's easy to work with. Okay, and then I need 2.5. Now, as I'm doing a quilt along for my patterning, this is actually how I do it as well. As I take a look at the previous things, and I see what we can use for the block that we're currently working on. There we are. So this one is good. Okay, what else do I need for white? I need white and black. Well, I only have this single one. That's definitely not enough. So that's 1 white strip. And let me take a look to see. I'm going to do some math to see if I need a full strip or if I need a half strip. So let's do, because I only have a black half strip. I don't have a white half strip. So let's see, 6 times 2.5 is 15, and then 8 times 1.5 plus 15. I have 27 inches of fabric that I need. Why? Well, if I cut a strip in half, that's going to give me about 20 inches. So this tells me I need a full strip. So I definitely need 1 full strip in order to do that. Okay, so I need 1.5-inch strip. Now the next one is brown. So I need a white and a brown. Well, I need a half one for that one. All right, so then I need 2 white strips. 1 regular strip and then 1 half strip. There we are. Make sure I didn't catch any fabrics under there. I did not. There we are. And then let's cut that. So I'm cutting 2 white 1.5-inch strips because that's what I figured I need for the math. Perfect. All right, so 1.5 and 3. All right, let's get rid of this. There we are. I love this white fabric. It is super nice. This is the Toscana white by Northcott. It's a super cool fabric. There we are. All right, so I said I need a single white and black. I haven't had any black cut yet, so I'm going to set this aside. I'm going to leave it there. But I did say I had to have a half of a white to a half of a brown. Oops. There we are. So let me cut my brown in half. And then I will cut my white in half. And I know I need to sew these together. There we are. And I'm going to take these and set these aside as some of the strips we've got to sew together. All right, so next I said white and black. I don't have the black yet. All right, let's back up again. So now I'm moving back. Now remember, this is what you're doing whenever you are piecemealing. When you're grabbing from a fabric from a previous pattern that you've already got cut, or let's see if you're using scraps. If you're trying to use scraps in one of these blocks, this is the technique of how you're going to do it. So let's take a look at the black next. So black, let me grab my solid pieces of my black and cut those to see if I have enough. All right, so I need 4 for this block. I need 4 2.5s. That's 2, 4. Okay, and then I need 2 1.5s. Okay, and then 1 4.5. I'm just gonna cut 2. 1 2 3 4. Here we are, and that little bit is too small, so that goes into the trash pile. Uh-oh. Is that a 4.5? No, it's a 3.5! Oh no, my piece is too short. And I don't have any fabric left. Dang it. I knew. Oh man. Something told me to just cut a single one just in case. But that's what happens sometimes. Hello, Danielle. How are you? Yeah. Well, I got 4 of those. And then I've got 2 of these. So at least have that amount. So I'm going to go diving in my scrap pile to see if I have any of this fabric so I don't have to cut an entire 2.5-inch strip. So let's go scrap diving. I just found binding. It is in the same line of fabric and it is 3 inches wide. That's perfect because we need a 2.5. So I found my scrap. So I'm going to iron this out, and that is going to save me from wasting fabric and having to cut an entire thing, an entire strip of fabric, which is great. Lots of steam. Now, you notice I used steam, and I still have a bit of seam in there. So I'm going to pull out my starch, which I hardly ever use, as you can tell, because it's all the way hidden way back in there. So I don't even have a command for this. But this is the starch that I use. It is Mary Ellen's Best Press. It's a clear starch. And I love it. It's a great starch. So let's show it before and after. So this is after steam. All right. And spray it on there. And then iron it. All right, let's take a look. There it is. And that's why I like that stuff. Isn't that cool? It just immediately takes out all of it. And it's not stiff. It's still the regular fabric. So it doesn't make it super starchy stiff. The biggest thing for this is really just to get out, oops, there you go, is just to get out those wrinkles, those stubborn wrinkles that you can't get. All right, so now, first thing I want to do is let's cut this down to 2.5 inches. Okay. There's 6 and 8.5. There we are. We're cutting down to 2.5 inches. And then let's cut our 4.5 inches. And then I can even take this and add it to my scraps left over of this fabric. All right, so we've got that. I may have to do it again though, because you never know, right? All right, 4.5. There we are, perfect. I actually have an entire hamper sitting right there full of scraps. So whenever on my website, on the Quiltoni.com, you can actually buy my scraps. And I literally go into that hamper and pull scraps out for you to throw into a bag to send to you. So so when I need stuff, I go into the same hamper. All right, so here's my 4.5. So we're good on solid black. I don't have to cut any more 2.5-inch strips, and that was the whole point of that. Okay, so now I've got the 2.5. Let's take a look at the 1.5. So the black. Now we know we need a full 1.5-inch strip for the white and the black to go with this one. So we know we need at least one. Okay, and then blue and black. Okay, let's take a look at this blue and black. I already have blue and black from the previous block of the duck block. So we've got that. Let's see, I need one set. Let me go ahead and just cut this. I think I've got enough. I'm doing the math in my mind, and yeah, I think there's enough here. I think I don't have to sew this again. See what I mean? How much time this saves when you're just doing a few blocks, pulling the fabric from previous blocks. Okay, so I need 1, 2.5. Okay, and then 2 1.5. So it'd be there. And that's it. And I still have that left over. So I can set that aside. And this slipped a little bit, so I'm going to make sure. Yep, that's 2.5. Yep, okay, making sure it's still good, right? And what I like to do is I like to split these up and then lay them down just like that. So that all of the seams that are pointing towards the blue are in one pile, all the seams that are pointing towards the black are in another pile. And then those are ready for laying out. All right, so let's take a look. The other black I need is black and brown. Well, we know that I had none of the browns with the hunting duck, so I do need that. Now the black and the brown, let's see, black and brown is only a half strip. I only need this right here. I really only need that one. So I'm going to take the other half strip, and guys, this is already ready to go. So I really only, and I'm going to put it over here with the other one, I really only have to cut 1.5-inch black strip to go with this full white strip. So yes, very excited. All right, so let's trim this. Yeah, and Casey, with my schedule, I'm streaming now every Thursday from 5:30 to 7:30, so just 2 hours, specific projects, doing specific things, and it's giving me time to actually do filming for my stuff. So the hunting duck block, if you guys are just joining us live here on YouTube, or if you're watching the rerun, if this is after February 15th, 2021, the hunting duck block is on YouTube. I'm going to be editing that this weekend, and then you can go through and do it step by step and make it. Okay, so we've got that. Now I said I need 1.5-inch strip. Perfect. And I can, whoops, look at what I did. I forgot. I did not cut through all the way. I think these new rotary blades have because it's a different material, it's got a different learning curve behind them, and I'm not getting the cuts as nice as I know they can do. I think I've just got to retrain my brain on using them. Okay, so let's do this. And I'm done with the black. All right, and I'm going to take the black and the white and set those aside. Now, I only have one color. Oh, and I'm going to take this and I'm going to set this aside right here because I may use it. I may need it whenever I do my cutting. I don't know. You know what? No, I'm going to stick it up here out of the way. All right, so now one more color left, and we're done with all of our basic cutting. Way ahead of what we did with that hunting duck block. And then I just have to sew all of the combinations, the 1.5 inch strips together. So for our blue, our bright blue, okay, let's grab our bright blue fabrics. I need 2 4.5, so I have one already, 8 2.5 inch squares, and 16 of those. Okay. I don't have enough. Because in the directions it says I need two blue strips. Well, that's not even one solid one, so I know I don't have enough. So I'm going to take these and set these aside for now. So I know I need at least one 2.5 inch strip. In fact, you know what? Let me do the math and show you how we're going to do our math. So this is 8 times 2.5 is 20 inches plus 24 plus 20. I am now at 44 plus 9. So I need, 53 inches. So we know a strip, a full strip, we round that down to 40 inches wide. I'm going to take this and measure this. And this one is 24 inches. So I only have to cut one 2.5 inch strip instead of 2. So just doing my math just to make sure, because I hate cutting things and then going back and not having enough. It's really frustrating sometimes. So I know I have to cut at least one 2.5 inch strip. So now let's take a look at the 1.5 inch strips. Now according to here, it says I need 2 1.5s. But remember, I've already cut the black and blue and the white and blue. So let's see what else I need. So with the blues, I need brown and blue, and brown and blue. Let's see. Bright blue to medium brown, I need one full strip. I can't do a half strip, I need a full strip. Let's just double check and make sure with my math, so I don't have to do that. All right, let's do math to make sure I can't get by with a half cut, because I have a half already from previously already cut. Okay, so let's see. There we are. All right, so I'm going to multiply this. So 2.5 times, oh, it's only need one set. So that's 5. Oh, wait, no. I'm looking at the wrong things. Wow, this would help. All right, so 8 times 2.5 is 20. Oh, right away. That's 20. So I know by adding in the 1.5 inch ones, it's over half. All right, so I'm going to take this and set that aside because I know I'm not going to use that. And let me cut my blue strips. So I need a full 1.5 and I need a 2.5. Okay, so 2.5. And then 4. There we are, much better. See, I told you it was me with pressing it down. Whoops, and I said that, and of course one caught. All right, so we've got those. Let me put the blue away, and then we'll set aside that blue and brown strip to combine together, and then I will cut my blues, and then I'll cut my browns, and then we'll sew all of our strips together and get those cuts. So I'm combining the brown and the blue, so I'm going to take those and put those aside. Okay, and then now let's cut our blues. So we'll get our blues cut and then our browns cut. Definitely yes. Oh, I get to show you guys again how I cut my stacks. So whenever you're cutting multiple pieces of the same exact fabric, you can definitely stack and layer it. So for example, this is my first strip. So I'm going to lay this down. Now my second strip, I'm going to iron it. Remember, I always want to make sure these are nice and ironed before we cut. I'm going to lay this on top so that now I'm actually cutting 4 at a time. All right, so we flip back over to my blue solids. All right, so I'm going to cut my 2.5 inch squares first because I need 8 of those. Let's see. 2.5. There's 4. 8. Okay, and how much? Oh yeah, I got plenty of room. All right, so there's 8 of those. And then I need 16 1.5s. So let's cut this down. 4, 8, 12. I think I've got enough. 16. Nice. I do. Oops. Let me trim that. There we go. 4, 8, 12. Oops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay, so there's 16 there. So that now I just need 2 4.5s. So I'll set that aside. And perfect. And you see how I saved time by just cutting one of these strips because I already had one from a previous block. And there we go. And now this is my extra that I can use for the future. And there's my blocks. Okay, so we're setting those aside. So now let me do the brown. So I'm going to iron my brown out and cut those pieces. And then we'll do our sewing of our strips together. There we are. Great. And I have an extra strip of the white left over. So I'm going to set that aside. And there are my strips. And then you can see nice how this is. So if you've never sewn strips before, I use a 1/4 inch foot width guide. So this piece of metal right here, actually, whenever you touch this piece of metal, you're sewing a perfect 1/4 inch. Now, a week and a half ago, I released a video here on YouTube about a scant 1/4 inch. A scant seam is important when your measurements need to be perfect. A scant 1/4 inch is just slightly smaller. So just a slightly smaller 1/4 inch. And that's because when you're ironing your seam, your fabric is folding over and causing a little bit of waste there in that actual seam. So by sewing it just a little bit smaller, you're actually making it even more perfect. So how I sew a scant 1/4 inch on my 1/4 inch seam with guide is I sew just barely to the left. All right, so for this scant 1/4 inch, I'm going to go just to the left. So I'm not, you can't see it from this angle, but excuse me, I'm not actually touching this piece of metal. I am going just to the left of it. So there's barely a little bit of daylight between my fabric and that piece of metal. And what that does is that gives me a perfect seam. Because when I iron it, whether it's ironed to the left or to the right, it's going to take that into account, and it's going to be a 1/4 inch at that point. That's it. So now at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of my strips and I'm going to cut them in half. Now, when you're cutting your strips in half, remember, you're not going to cut them in half this way, because if you cut them in half this way, you've just undone everything you've done sewing. Instead, we're cutting them in half this way. Now, what I like to do is I like to find the very edges and maximize my fabric as much as I can. So you see here, I've got like a little chunk of blue that's kind of hanging out. I'm not using that to factor into my folding in half. And then that way I use as much fabric as possible. All right, so let's go ahead and cut all of our strips that we just sewed in half. There we are. Beautiful. And then we're going to nest some seams. we're going to, I forgot, we're actually going to nest some seams this week. So we're going to iron these and nest them for efficient cutting. So you saw me earlier when I was cutting the strips from the previous block with the fabrics. I am going to do the same exact thing, but I'll show you how to iron those. There we go. So with the iron, what we want to do is we want to iron these in opposite directions. How we do that? Let's take our white and our brown. We want to lay these out where one of them, the brown, is on top, one white on top. Now, how I remember this is I've cut this in half. All right, so this has been in half. So now I'm going to lay these out just like that. All right. Then you want to lock your seams in. Make sure you iron this first before you actually iron it up on both of them. Locking your seams in place helps make sure that you're ironing a straight line. So by locking them into place, you're actually preventing warping of the fabric, which causes it to go a little bit wonky. And yes, wonky is an official term. Look it up. Uh-oh, my water is almost gone. There we go. There we are. My steam wasn't working. I love using steam whenever I'm pressing my seams to either way because it makes sure that those seams are good. There we are. That seam is nice and good now. Okay, so let's press this in again. Just make sure that those seams really are locked. Now, there is a purveying view that when you press your seams, you should always press towards the dark side. Well, here we pressed one towards the light side. And that's important because in pixel quilting, you always want to make sure your seams are ironed in opposite directions. And then that way you can cut them correctly. So in this case, we have it towards the brown and we have it towards the white. And we're going to nest these together. So we're using our fingers to make sure that these are lined up perfectly. And then we're going to cut these. So let's cut these. There we are. All right, now brown and white. How many do I need? I need 3 of the 2.5. So there's 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then 1, 1.5. There we are. And that can be set aside. This goes in scraps. Now remember earlier, when there's a couple of them, I like to split them up into 2 separate piles. One with the seam pointing towards the one color, and the other one the seam pointing towards the second color. The first color, second color. That's what I should do. I shouldn't use the words "other" in things because it's confusing. Even for both of the kinds. And then that actually is easier than when you're grabbing all of the fabric when you're laying it out for the next step. All right. So there's those. Let's set that aside. Next up, we have 3 more to go. So at this point in the video tutorial, I'm going to speed it up and go so that you can see it super fast. And all of our fabric is cut. So now at this point, I'm going to take all of the extra fabric. Look at how much waste there is. Yeah, this is my fault. I have so much waste with these little tiny things, but it can't be helped. So this is a great fabric to turn into a scrappy quilt. So I'm going to put that aside over there. So now we're going to lay out one of our blocks. We're going to lay out one of the blocks. Words. They're hard. I can't say them. We're going to lay out one of our rows. We're going to lay out the first row. So we're going to lay out row number 1. And I'm going to show you how we lay out this row. We're going to sew it. We're going to iron it. And then next week we're going to pick up and do the rest of the rows. All right, so row number 1. I'm just going to lay out a bunch of these. Just so I've got them. All right. So I'm going to need the blues and the blacks. So let me set those out. Great. All right, row number 1. Oh, you know what I forgot? I skipped a step. Wow. I apologize. If we take a look at step number 5, we have some horizontal ones to put together. Technically, row number 1, you know what? We'll do that next week because we can lay everything out and then you put the horizontals. What I like to do is one row at a time, but I like to hit the horizontals beforehand. So what I do is let's sew row number 1 together. We'll do that step by step. And then next week we'll sew the diagonals and then finish doing the rest of the rows. Hello, Nick. How are you today? Are you ready for trivia tomorrow? All right, so row number 1. Here we are. And if you did not see it in the hunting deck block, I like to organize them in pairs of 2 whenever I'm laying them out, because this is how I'm going to pin them together. I know you are. I know you're always ready for trivia. All right, so then this one. There we are. Now, Anrield, what do these arrows mean in my patterns? So in this case, the arrow is pointing towards the right. What does that mean? It is right over left, pin it in place, okay? So, oh, you know what? I forgot to finish laying this out. I meant to finish laying all this out while I was waiting for that answer. All right, so let's do this one, and then this, and then this. All right, so all of our pieces are in place. So we're going to take this right piece, we're going to flip this over this left piece, and pin it into place. So why do we do the right over left in the case of the arrow pointing towards the right? It's because once I finish sewing this and ironing it, immediately I can lay it back out again. So I don't have to open my pieces up and take a look at which way they need to be ironed. Because if the arrow goes to the right and I pick up the right over the left, this is the way that it needs to be ironed. Oh, wait, hold on. What'd I do? Yep, that's right. Oh, that goes there. Look at that. I grouped it wrong. I messed this up, but that's okay. I realized it. All right, so right over left and pinning into place. There we are. Right over left and pin into place. All right, and let's sew this. Remember, don't sew over your pins. It is a horrible, horrible habit that I have. Take your pins out as you are sewing them. Now, and of course, I am chaining as I am sewing these pieces together. So I have something constantly in my machine as I am sewing. Now, if you're interested in making a full pixel quilt, and not just these blocks, after we're finished with this throw pillow, our next one on the table is is Loki, the god of mischief. So if you want to pick up the God of Mischief pattern or kit, I do sell full kits that are pre-cut strips available in my shop. You totally can. There we are. Now, I've got my pieces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my purple thing and I'm going to separate my chained pieces. I don't remember what the command for this is. Is it purple? Is it thing? Yeah, I don't remember. Anyways, so I've got these. So now let's iron them. So whenever I place them on my ironing board, this is the way it's going to be ironed. I don't have to do anything else but lay these pieces out. All right, so we've got my pieces. I'm just going to lay them all out just like that. And then we want to lock these seams in. Snip! That's it. Thank you. We're going to lock these seams in. And then go up. Now remember, locking those seams in place, make sure that I have a straight seam as I'm ironing it. If you do not sew and lock your seams in place, you may get wonky seams. As much as wonky sounds cool, we don't want wonky in this case. We want nice, straight seams. And this is what alternating your seams does. So in this case, when I laid this out, you see the larger piece goes towards the black, the smaller piece goes towards the blue, and that's what nesting seams does, is you get perfect points every single time. All right, up that way. Okay. Now, let's lay this out and do it again. So I'm going to take these. It goes to the right, correct? Yes. Oops. I went the wrong direction. It goes this way. There we are. There's all my pieces. And then remember, right over left. And pin it into place. Right over left, pin it into place. Okay, now I only have these two to sew, so let's sew these. Now remember, as I'm sewing these, I'm doing a scant 1/4 inch. I am not sewing a full 1/4 inch. I am just sewing a scant 1/4 inch. And then using my scrap fabric. And I'm just going to use my scissors to separate those, because there's no reason that I have to actually use my snip, my purple thing. Now, let's say at this point in time, if you mess up the direction of your fabrics, okay? So let's say if I accidentally flip this and I go to iron it, there's an easy way to tell if this is the correct way or not. Look at the way that your seams are pointing. If they're pointing up, it's going the wrong direction, because let's think about this. If we iron this way, then that means my seams are going to do that. Well, they're not going in the same direction. And remember, with the way that these strips work, laying everything out, all of the strips get laid down in opposite directions, meaning that these are all going to go the same direction in the same row. Our arrows go to the right. The seams all go to the right. Okay? So, if you have the seam going down, when you iron this, and we hold this, oh yeah. See, my seams are all going in the same direction. So let's iron these. Let's do that. And then iron. There we are. And then now, let's pin. All right, so this is the beginning, and then there, and then there. Now, this one has 3 pieces left. So what I like to do is fold over the one side. And then fold over the other side. And I'm gonna sew both of these seams at the same time using my scrap fabric. Okay, so let's do that. There we are, and let's take this and flip it in. And we're going to turn this around this way. There we are. And then grabbing our scrap fabric, putting it back in again. And there we are. Now, we're going to iron this. So I'm going to take this back over to my ironing board, and I'm going to iron it. And then we have our first strip. All right, so let's take a look. Let's make sure that this is correct. Let's make sure this all goes to the left. Fantastic. I want to iron that seam in place. Iron that seam in place. There we are. And there is row number 1. Now, I'm going to take a look back at my row to make sure that this matches up. And I'm just double checking because I hate it whenever I sew a row to another row and I realize I've messed something up. And it's good. That row is completely good. It's ready to go. And our row number 1 is done. Now, we're going to take all of our cut pieces. I'm going to lay them out. I'm going to show you how I lay them out. And then we're going to lay the pieces out here and then assemble everything. And it looks like I do have 3 pieces that I need to assemble horizontally. So you know what? I'm going to go ahead and just do those now before I do anything else. So let's go ahead and lay our pieces out. So when I lay my pieces out, I like to lay them in a way so it's easy for me to grab. And remember, when I'm laying these out, I also like to have my seams pointing in opposite directions. So like these go towards the white, these go towards the black. So by laying them out that way, it's easy for me to see them. So I've got these. Oops, there we are. These are the blue. There we go, brown. And I find it's easier if I lay everything out ahead of time whenever I'm looking at them. There we are. We've got those. And then here's my solids. There we go. And then there, and there. Perfect. All right, so I've got all my pieces laid out. So now, I said I want to grab my horizontal pieces. Now remember, we're looking at this pattern as doing any of my quilt blocks as standalones. In all of my patterns, whether they're the quilt blocks or the standalone quilts, they may have horizontal pieces. They'll always show separately. So I know in my patterns, I say lay everything out first and then find those horizontals. I like to cheat a little bit with my own patterns and find those horizontals. So that's what I'm going to do first, is those 3 horizontals. So we need this. And then, okay, row 2 is going that way. The arrow's pointing that way. So I need to go towards the blue with the brown. Now, that's important. So here, remember these rows explain the way that the seam needs to point. All right, so these arrows are, does the seam need to point to the right or does the seam need to point to the left? So in row number 2, I'm assembling this one right here. I'm assembling this horizontal block right there. So in this case, you see how that arrow's pointing to the left? So I need to grab the blue and the brown piece where it's pointing towards the blue. And that's what I've done, is I've grabbed the blue and the black piece that's pointing towards the blue. All right, so there's my first one. Let me grab the next one. And row 6 is going to the left, so this has got to go towards the black. And then blue. And then row 9 is to the right, so this is going to go towards the black with the black and brown. There we go. And there are all my pieces, so I need to now sew them together and then come back and then finish laying everything out. So let's iron these. Now, if you notice, I didn't really pay attention to which way these were going. It doesn't make a difference. It does not make a difference at all which way these seams are going, which way they're facing. There we go. So really, you can just iron them any which way because I haven't really laid the pieces out yet. Now, if you take a look at the hunting deck block, that will be live on YouTube if you're watching me live here in 2 weeks. If you're watching this video on YouTube, it's already up. The hunting deck block, I made sure these are going certain ways. In this case, it doesn't matter because I haven't laid my pieces out yet. So I'm just going to take these and set these aside as my already combined pieces. So now I'm going to take my row number 1 and put it up out of the way. And I'm going to lay out rows 2 through 9. And remember, when I lay my rows out, I lay them out in groups of 2. Let me do that right there so you can see it. So that is the first one. In fact, let me get my paper so I can see. I actually use a piece of paper so that I can see exactly where I am and make sure that I can see the pieces easier as I'm laying them out. So let's grab this one. So I put them in groups of 2 because that is easier than when I pick it up. Because remember, row number 2, the arrow goes to the left. So when I'm pinning these, I'm going to take the left over the right and pin it into place. So I'll show you what I mean with the rest of row number 2. All right, so we've got then this one, and then this is a combined piece of black on top with blue and brown, and then a brown. I love this batik. It is so pretty. And then blue and brown. Now, I decided to have the seam go up. So that means the next one, the seam has to go down because we need to nest these seams. I talked about nesting seams earlier. Last week's video, which is also, if this is combined, it's earlier in the stream, earlier in the video. But so the seam needs to be nested. So that means that the seam goes one way, and then the next one, the seam goes the opposite way. So in this case, the seam needs to go down, needs to point down towards the brown one, just like that. Okay, and then solid brown. Perfect. And then black and brown. And then black. And then And there. And just like I said, now I'm going to pin these together. So row number 2 is going to the left again. So it's going to the left. So I'm going to take this piece, left over right, and pin it into place. So let me go ahead and put my pins in. Just like that. Now, the reason why I do this, and I make sure I'm picking up my left over my right, is because what this does is after I sew it and then I iron it, my piece is going that way. So it's being faced that way. Well, that's exactly the way that I need it to go for my nesting of my seams for my rows. So let me go ahead and pin the rest of this one. And then I'm going to lay the rest of rows 3 to 9 out. And pin them. And fast forward everything. And then come back and unfast forward when it's time to sew it. I need another piece to go towards the white, so I'm going to double check this. Towards the white, towards the white, towards the brown, towards the brown, towards the brown, towards the white. And all I have are pieces that go towards the brown. What do? You iron it. I'm literally just going to re-iron this. And how I re-iron it is I like to first re-iron the back and then iron the front. And that's it. And now I have a piece that goes towards the white. We've got them all done. So now I'm going to switch cameras, and just like we did with row number 1, I'm going to sew all the pieces, and then after I sew them all, I'm going to iron them, repin them, and keep on going until I have an entire row, just like row number 1 for rows 2 to 9. Now, if you want to learn how to sew, if you have not yet learned how to sew, and if you have a sewing machine, I am now officially giving virtual lessons on sewing techniques, all sorts of things. I'm probably going to put them up on my Shopify site, on my website, probably in the next week or so that you can purchase virtual lessons. So that's something that I've just started that I'm really excited about. this one, oh, this is row number 4, so this goes to the left. Now, this one has 5 pieces, so it has an odd number of pieces. Because of this, we can't sew all these pieces together. We have to leave one piece out, kind of like that one's left out of this row. So in this case, we always want to make sure that we do everything the same all the way down. For the first time, if there was a leftover piece, I left off the last piece, as you see both here and here. And this time, I want to leave off the first piece. So I'm going to take that first piece and put that down. Because if we get to this row or this row, if there's an odd piece out, I want to include these 2 pieces. That is extremely important. So we're going to leave that first piece out and then pin these next 4 pieces together. Now, you notice for row number 9, I have 3 pieces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up that left piece, because I already know which way to iron it because I've ironed the first few pieces. So I'm going to pin that left piece, and then I'm going to flip over this right piece and pin that one. And then I can sew both sides at the same time, just alternate it. And then when I go to iron it, I just look to see which way I do it and iron them both. So we have finished sewing our rows together, so now we're going to iron our rows. I'm just going to take them one at a time from the bottom and do the ironing, and then lay them out. And then once I've gotten them all laid out, then I'm going to pin them together and pin each of those rows together. Now remember, we want to lock in our seams. So I'm going to lock in the seams from both sides first, and then, there we go, then I'm going to iron. Now, the nice thing, this is my favorite part of putting my quilts together, whether it's my quilt, a quilt block, anything else. Because this is the point that you can start to see the picture. So at this point, I'm going to iron it all, and then we will speed it up until we get to all of these being ironed. There's our dog. Look at that. There's our dog. All right, so I'm going to take all of this. Let me set that aside. I'm going to take all of this and I'm actually going to shift this up because I am going to combine them together. So now at this point when we are sewing our rows together, what we want to do is we want to take this bottom row and we want to flip it up over this top row here. So all I'm doing is taking this and flipping it up over the top row. Now, whenever you are lining your rows up in order to pin everything, the first thing you want to do is find that very first words. Words are hard. Nested seam. Man, I couldn't think of words. Hello, hello, Erin. How are you today? So when we're doing rows, we want to find our very first nested seam, and we want to pin that. So remember, just like before, we are finding this nested seam right there, where they're going in opposite directions, and I'm moving it around until that locks in place perfectly. Once that locks into place, I'm going to put a pin in it. Then I'm going to go back and I'm going to put a pin in this open area right here. Now, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look to see where the next locked seam is, where that next nested seam is. It's this one right here. So I'm going to move these seams around until they're butted up right up against each other. And then I'm going to put a pin in there. Then I'm going to go back and any open seams, just like this one here. So you see here, there's a seam on the top, but there's not one on the bottom. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to repin that one right there. So to make sure that that's not going to go anywhere and that seam's not going to flippy flappy while I'm sewing it. So same exact thing. Now I'm looking to see where the next nested seam is. Oh, it's all the way down here. So here's that next nested seam. So let's butt it up against each other, put a pin in it. And then now, whenever you're looking at these seams, you see there's a couple on top, and then there's one on the bottom, or two on the bottom that don't match up. So I'm putting pins in all of those, both the one that's on the bottom and the ones that are on the top. So put your pins in there. And let's find the next nested seam, and so on and so on. So now this is what I'm going to do for the rest of these. Now I have an odd number of rows. I have 9 rows. That means one of these is not going to get paired up. It's going to be the very last one, row number 1. That's perfectly okay, because I'll show you what we're going to do at that next pass. And there is the one left. So there's our little one left. So what I'm going to do at this point now, I'm going to sew this one and sew it to that one. I'm going to sew these two together and then this one by itself, so that I have 3 sections that I'm going to sew. So at this point, I'm going to take these, I'm going to move them to the sewing machine. I'm going to get all of these sewn, and then I'm going to iron and pin these two together. Iron and pin that together, iron it and hold on to that, and then I'm going to sew these two, iron them, and then I'm going to pin all 3 together. So I'll come back and I'll show you that part when I'm pinning all 3 together. So now we have our 3 pieces. So what I'm going to do to be efficient is I'm going to take the bottom piece, I'm going to flip it up over this middle piece and pin it into place. Then, once that's done, I'm going to take this top piece, I'm going to flip it over, and then I'm going to turn around, pin it in place, and then I'm going to sew both ends, and we'll have the big reveal for our laughing dog block. So, let's do this side first. Alright, so there's my block, and it's done. And if you're putting it in, like I said, if you're putting it into a quilt, it's done and ready to go. And you can just go ahead and add it in. And that's the laughing dog block, or if you're making a second block from any of my quilt-alongs. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like this video, follow my YouTube, as well as Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, I missed one, Pinterest, Twitch, Facebook, and my Quite Nerdy Quilters Facebook group. And thanks.